Hi, well, I'm here in Malta, sitting on my balcony with the amazing view of the Mediterranean behind me, which would be lovely, but in some ways it's a little bit torturous because I'm in COVID quarantine, so I can see it, but I can't go into it at the moment. But I wanted to record a bit of a video because it's been a really interesting week. I'm here in Malta. I came for a leadership conference with my company RS, and I guess this will be a bit of a love letter to RS, this video, because this is the first time I've been able to come to one of these overseas leadership conferences. Obviously we haven't had them while the COVID pandemic's been going on, and it's definitely been a tough few years for everyone. You're dealing with the pandemic, pushing to keep performance up. It's been tough, but we've had an amazing 2 years as a company. Back in the FTSE 100, all sorts of really good stuff going on, great results. But I think more importantly, and something we talked about at the conference, was about our corporate culture and what we bring to the business and what's important to us. So this is my first leadership conference with RS, but it's also the first time I've left the country on my real passport. So a bit of trepidation, I must admit, travelling as myself for the first time. Travelling while trans can be nerve-wracking, although it was a relatively uneventful flight from that perspective, albeit a bit chaotic at the airport. But there are a few things I just wanted to talk about, really, about the experience here in Malta. So I arrived on last Saturday. Had an amazing dinner with my team, my colleagues in the leadership team for product and supply management, but also our colleagues from the Italian business. So really meeting with people I've had very little face-to-face interaction with, and in the case of the Italian team, the first time I'd had interaction with them. So it was really lovely just to have a bit of face-to-face time with people and just enjoy an evening out where we got to chat and we got to know each other a bit better than we had before. Sunday I spent in a leadership team meeting where we were working on our objectives and key results for the following year. And what that proved to us is that it's so much easier to do these things face-to-face. Also, it's a lot quicker when you're in a nice environment and you don't want to be stuck in a meeting room all day. So we did some fabulous work there, had a great barbecue in the evening, where I got to meet lots of colleagues that had never seen the real me. Some had never seen me at all, and I got to talk to some of my colleagues from our American business, Allied, who I'd never met before other than through the screen, which again, it was just really lovely to connect again and to have some time just to see people in a relaxed environment, in a relaxed atmosphere. So day one of the conference was Monday. So after having breakfast, there were a few things that happened that I just want to talk about a little bit. So I had breakfast, went up to register, and I was taken aside by somebody who's been associated with our business, a very senior person, who I had worked with before and had seen me pre-transition, and they took me aside and they told me one of their own personal stories, and they told me about how their child had come out as trans over the last 18 months. And this isn't unusual. A lot of people will talk to me about when they have family members transitioning and want to talk about experiences and what we can share and what we can make better. But they really made my day by saying that my posting of things on LinkedIn, that the fact that I'd shared my journey so openly, that I had been quite vulnerable in my transition, had helped them as a parent to better support their child. And one of the things I always said when I started to become vocal about transitioning is that if it helps just one other person, if it just makes one other person's life easier, if it means that one person doesn't have to go through the things I went through when I was growing up, then everything was worth it. So it was a real surprise to hear that. It's certainly not what I was expecting that morning, but I really did walk into the conference venue feeling, the things I do, the things I say make a difference, and that's, I think, what everyone really wants to have. So went into the conference venue, amazingly organised conference, incredible venue for the session, enormous screen. I was desperate to go and run West Side Story on it because it would have given me that cinema feeling. I haven't been to the cinema proper for some years because I've been avoiding COVID. I've managed to avoid COVID for 2 years. But sat down and we started to talk really about our values. We started to talk about our leadership values and how we contribute to the culture of our business. So this wasn't one of those conferences where we were just talking about sales figures. We weren't talking about the balance sheet. We weren't talking about audit results because we have those. We see those. We can search those out. For many of us, that's the day job. What we were really talking about was the heart of our business and what it is that makes it special. And that has a lot of resonance for me. I was reading an article on LinkedIn this week about the dangers of businesses talking as if they were family. And I found myself disagreeing. I think there is a lot to be said about the family that can be found at work, particularly for marginalised communities, where you may not have that family support, you may not have that support network around you. Having a business that really does have those values of support and those values of acceptance and we talk about this as an expression, but it's true, of allowing somebody to be their true self makes a great deal of difference. So sat down to listen to some of our speakers and opening the day after a fabulous intro video from our CEO and our Chief Finance Officer. Our CEO, Lindsley Ruth, stood up to talk and got on to talking about his view of what's important, of his values, of what he wants to see within our business. I had no idea what he was going to say, but he started to talk through things which are important to him, and actually they're his red lines, they're the things that he expects from us within the business. And then he mentioned me. And I was pretty taken aback. I wasn't expecting it to happen. So this is what he said.
Nothing wrong with being authentic, bringing your true self to work. I have immense pride in calling Emily Hamilton a friend of mine. I think what Emily Hamilton does and the courage that she shows is remarkable, absolutely remarkable. I see the post on LinkedIn. I think I'm proud to be associated with Emily. I'm proud that she can bring her true self to work every day. Are you? And it's not just about bringing your true self to work. It's about bringing your best self to work every day. And everyone should feel empowered to do that. No one should ever be discriminated against within this company or in life. What we can control is our own company. And that's unacceptable for people not to feel like they can bring their true selves to work. And they shouldn't be made fun of. We should support those individuals. And if you can't do that, this surely isn't the place for you. Bring your best self to work, though. It's really important. It's important that we get to know one another, that we be authentic, that we don't take ourselves too seriously.
So I have to say, I was pretty taken aback by those remarks. I wasn't expecting them. And I didn't really know how to react. I think hearing Lindsley talk about me as his friend had a lot of resonance. I look back just over 2.5 years ago when I tentatively came out of work, following the most appalling crisis of my life. When I shared a video, I wasn't socially transitioned at the time, but I shared a video of me as the real me, largely to thank our Spectrum ERG group, but something was shared with our board as a real sign of success in some ways, of what at that time was probably quite an untested diversity and inclusion strategy. But it started to prove that it was real, that people within the business were able to be their true selves. And I remember then when that video went out, the first person to contact me was Lindsley, to offer all his support. And that means a lot, because my view is that businesses are led from the top, and if the top is good, the rest is more likely to be good. There is an old German saying that my late boss, Andreas, and my current boss, Christian, have used a few times in that the fish rots from the head. But by the same token, if the fish has got a fresh head, then you have fresh fish below. I'm not sure, I might have extended that metaphor a bit too far. But knowing that at the very top of my business, we have people who, in the face of let's face it, some quite appalling attacks on the trans community, particularly even in the last week while I've been away, who say not only is it okay to be your true self, but challenging everyone in the room to say, are you your true self? Are you being true to who you are? Are you being true when you come to work? And saying that it's not acceptable to be a business where we don't accept difference, where we don't accept that people are who they say they are, that people are the people that they are. Seeing that coming from a CEO, that's what I would call true allyship. It's very easy to have a rainbow logo once a year. It's very easy to sponsor a few events. It's very easy to appear on a podcast and talk about equality and diversity. But almost to give that very distinct statement, that distinct instruction to people, that if they aren't prepared to be inclusive, if they aren't prepared to be part of a business that values difference and values diversity, that this isn't the business for them, that speaks volumes, that speaks a lot. And coming straight on the back of that conversation I'd had with the other colleague, it made me feel 10 feet tall, and I always moan about my height being a point of dysphoria, but in this respect, that was absolutely fabulous. We had a great rest of the day, a great number of sessions, hearing from people outside of the business, hearing from young people in our partner university organisation, who in some cases were really breaking their own difficulties, their difficulties in speaking, their nervousness, speaking to a room of senior people, 200 odd senior people, with fluency, with real confidence, with absolute assurance about how they'd developed and how they'd come along. These were all things that really spoke to me. They really set the agenda that I'm in a business that really values development of growth and development of people. And I think as businesses, you have to think beyond what it is you make, what it is you sell, how you transact. You've got to think about the way you go about that. And I certainly, it's a bit of a love letter, as I said earlier, to RS, but that's certainly something that's really valuable. That's something that engenders such a sense of loyalty to the business and such a sense of belonging, that the business can't help but get more out of people from doing that. Now, I think I mentioned it at the start, and you can probably hear in my voice that I came down with COVID after day one of the conference. So I was just sitting here looking at my last negative test that I had on day one. The business made really clear and made it really important that we test every day. I'm sure I probably picked it up on the plane with all the people who were arguing the odds with the cabin crew about whether or not they should wear masks. I guess it was my time, so I came down quite poorly on the Tuesday. So I missed the rest of the conference. But the minute I called in and said that I had got COVID and that I was needing now to isolate, and the rules are still 10 days isolation here in Malta, so stuck in my room, beautiful view. I'm not going to complain about the view, I'm not going to complain about the room, but it is somewhat tortuous that I can look at that view, but I can't walk out into it at the moment. But the first people to contact me when I reported in positive, who was it? It was the organisers of the event, people I would consider my friends. It was Lindsley, it was David, our CEO and CFO. And they've continued to check in on me throughout to make sure that I'm okay, that I'm surviving. And yet today is the first day I felt human. It's the first day I've got dressed and got out of bed. So this is 4 or 5 days into isolation. So I'm keeping myself amused by watching Bond movies. I'm going to have to start doing some work at some point. On Monday I've still got a few days left in quarantine. But I started to receive that real sense of love, that sense of community from people around me. I had bags sent up to me, all RS branded, but with medication, with treats, with Percy Pigs. You can still get Percy Pigs out here in Malta, with things just to keep me going and to keep me occupied while I'm stuck in the room. And again, a real tangible, this is not just talk, this is a tangible example of how a business, when it cares about its people, really engenders that sense of belonging and loyalty. I received my first flowers, the first flowers I've ever received from the broader commercial team. So I've cried more than once. On the Wednesday night, the last night of the conference, there was an evening of wearing white, and people have variously said it looked a bit like we were either redoing Mamma Mia, or in some cases I wondered if the papal visit had really swayed people into wearing white. But I was really upset. I bought a new outfit. I was really looking forward to joining my colleagues, but I put my outfit on, came out onto the balcony and was serenaded by my team from below the balcony. They all made sure they came to see me, to make sure I felt a part of things. They warned me when the fireworks were about to come out, so I was able to come out and see the fireworks. And I just felt loved. And that may sound odd in a business context, but I really felt loved by my team. I felt valued by my team. And I keep repeating this over and over again. These are the things that make a successful business. You can shout, you can scream at people, you can set objectives, you can set targets, but if you don't engender a sense of people wanting to be part of the team, if you don't lead from that sense of everyone is part of that family, then I don't think you're going to have a successful business. So seeing the guys, being checked in on, even now today, this weekend, I've had people checking in on me. I took a call yesterday from a colleague who wasn't aware I was isolating. They weren't out at the conference, but they gave me another point of where inclusion is important. They wanted just to talk to me personally and say how they were reflecting when they were filling out our staff survey about inclusion and about how we were building an environment where people could be true, people could talk about the things that were impacting them outside of work, and they were explaining how they were on an IVF journey. And when they started that journey, and they're going through a number of cycles, they started that journey, they felt a sense of shame and embarrassment about talking about IVF at work. And there's nothing to be ashamed about, there's nothing to worry about accessing IVF. IVF is an amazing advance of science that allows people to become parents and to have that opportunity where that opportunity is otherwise denied. But what they reflected on was that my visibility over the last couple of years, the way that the business had reacted to my visibility over the last couple of years, had really given them the strength to be open about the journey they're on and to talk about, the struggles and the difficulties. IVF is not easy. And they just wanted to contact me to thank me for my visibility. And I want to thank them for doing that. And I want to thank them for being open. I want to thank them for seeing that there is no shame. There's nothing to be embarrassed about in looking for help with the things that you need day to day. I've always talked about the intersectionality of inclusion. I talk a lot about trans issues. Obviously, trans is the thing I know the most about. But I'm also an active member of Elevate, our women's group, and I've talked about endometriosis, I've talked about periods at work, really breaking down those taboos of things that not everyone will understand. But there are things people need to understand. There are things people need to understand that the world changed. Lindsley reflected on the way his world had changed around the mix of working from home as to working to the office. And things like how people deal with periods and how working from home has benefited that is something we've talked about, and we've talked about it openly. We've shared it within the business because these things are important. These things that people don't always understand. But to hear a colleague thanking me for being open and talking about that, again, it just really lifted my spirits. And I think there's a call to arms for everyone in every business. Don't be afraid to be open. Don't be afraid to be personal about your life, because you've got to bring your whole self to work. So there was a little bit of a jump cut there. I had to go to my door. So yeah, a bit of a love letter, bit of a stream of consciousness about the things that have happened this week. But if you take something away from this, take away that there is the old saying that culture eats strategy for breakfast. Good businesses have strategies. I'm a strategic change vice president. Strategy is my bag. But the culture that you set, the culture that you define as a leadership team from the very top, I think is one of the core reasons for a business's success. Because you can't bully people into good performance, you can't shout at people, you can't just set targets and expect people to follow them. And like every business, there's more we need to do. We know that, and we're open about that. But we are on that journey to greatness. And I feel a part of that. I feel like I've got a stake in that. And that's not just because it pays my bills, it's not just because it's the job I'm in. It's because it's in a business that is really telling the world how it does things. It's telling the world what the right answer is. It's telling the world that the things that are out there in the media, the things that are out there in politics, don't define how a business can be inclusive and how a business can work best. So thank you, RS, thank you, Lindsley, thank you, David, thank you to all my amazing colleagues. And hopefully by Tuesday, if I can get a negative test, I'll be heading back and I'll be seeing some of you back in the office. But thanks for listening to my rambles, and I look forward to seeing you all soon.